What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are heading back to a game that I covered last year called Riftbreaker. So for a refresher, let's talk about what Riftbreaker is really quick. So Riftbreaker is a game that pairs base building with action RPG by putting you in an exosuit called Mr. Riggs. Now this exosuit comes with a variety of weapons, ordnance, and more ways to cut down both enemies and resources. Now the point of the game is to follow along with the story as you land on hostile worlds, build your base, harvest resources, defend yourself against enemy attacks, and unlock talents in order to level up your character. Now all along the way, you're going to unlock new weapons, discover new species, and find hidden secrets on each world. Now today, we're talking about a huge update for the game along with its third DLC, Heart of the Swamp. Now I'd like to thank Exor Studios for letting me know about this update and for sponsoring this video. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get to it. So Heart of the Swamp is the latest DLC to come to Riftbreaker. It's available today, June 21st for $9.99. That's $9.99 US dollars. The DLC adds a new story campaign where heroes need to venture into two new biomes, the Fungal Swamp and the Fungal Forest. The swamp is a pretty diverse area. You have water, mud, limited building space, new creatures to fight against, and this enormous fungal tree that you actually need to go rescue. Now all of this adds together to form a pretty interesting gameplay experience because you're going to be fighting against the landscape, enemies, and extra conditions, meaning things like a potential toxic tornado that'll chew through both your base and your armor. Ultimately, the swamp is a very nasty place to call home. It's not somewhere you want to go vacation. It's not somewhere you want to build a house and set up a family. It is just not a great place to go and visit. Now, the forest, on the other hand, is a bit more of the traditional building experience. You don't have to worry about fighting the landscape as much, but you do still have to worry about the armies of alien creatures trying to wipe both you and your base out. They do not respond well to people setting up outposts and bases on their territory. So it's very give and take. It's easier to build, but you're also going to have to deal with, more armies of things trying to kill you. You'll still need to find resources to fuel your buildings, build defenses to protect your base, and explore it and collect resources, but also find some hidden secrets as you're going out and looking through the different maps. Now, I want to make sure to add here that the biomes themselves are added in the free update that we'll talk about here in a moment. Only the story campaign is added with the paid DLC. Now, I'm going to get to my experience in a minute. I'll talk to you guys about kind of what I got to see and play through, but let me tell you about what was added to the game because I'm sure that's what you guys are all here for. So that's what comes with the paid story DLC, just that campaign. But we also have a massive free update that has also landed. So the marquee additions for the free update are the new biomes. They're both available for exploration, survival modes, regular modes. And as a reminder, just so you guys are aware, survival is where you survive as long as you can against increasingly difficult odds, such as hordes of enemies, conditions, things like that. They also added new specialized buildings that function on top of water, which is going to be incredibly helpful for the swamp. And it's going to also include some new floating defensive towers to protect them. This is like floating flamethrowers, floating spears, a lot of really cool weapons. And we also have some new pipelines that can be used to transport liquids and gases across the marshy landscape as well. And if you play the swamp, you're going to be very, very, very familiar with setting up pipelines. There's also a new neutral creature roaming the fungal world called a pugrit, and if you feed it special fruits, you can get some new gameplay rewards. I'm not going to spoil anything, but if you find a fruit, try to find a pugrit and give it the fruit. Make sure you use your scanner to identify it so you don't actually kill it like I did. I dropped on the planet and I was like, what is that thing? And I just blew it away. And then I found another one later and I was like, oh, that was the thing I was supposed to feed special stuff to. So yeah, that was, make sure to not do that. Now, on top of that, we also have more than 70 new research items and technologies that can be used to enhance your base and also your exosuit abilities. So you're gonna have a ton of different ways to customize your overall gameplay experience, whether it's your base building that you really enjoy, whether it's making your exosuit even more powerful and going out and just slaying hordes of enemies. That's what you can do as well. There's a lot of different things that you can go and explore. They also added in new weapons and defensive towers, which the defensive tower is pretty cool because these are community inspired. So it's really cool to see them take some community ideas and then work them into the game. Okay, so those are all of the things that were added into the new update. It's a big one, guys. Like, it is a huge update. I was really impressed by how far the research and ability tree has grown since I last played, and this just continues to add even more to it to make it even more impressive. So let's talk about my experience so far with both the new paid story DLC and the updates, including the survival mode new biome. So first, I want to talk about the swamp because this is the one that's sort of the big ticket item in my mind. The swamp is a beast all on its own. Having to work around all the different pools of water to build a base is a very unique challenge because you can't build as densely as you normally would, which gives attackers a lot more points of weakness to exploit, right? If you're sitting there building a base, typically you build your buildings, then you kind of build it into a big square, and then you put your walls around it and defend it. You can't do that with this one because you have so much water and landmass is so separated by those pools of water that you have to build something that's a little bit more sprawling and spread out and expanded. Now, part 2 of this is that you can't use solar panels or wind turbines because those resources are scarce on this planet, meaning you're almost solely dependent on flammable gas created from sludge and plant biomass. Now, this adds another unique challenge to planning because you need to build completely different than you would on previous planets. I had to go back and read over each building again to pick the ones that would work and sort of refresh me on how does this one work, how does it interconnect with the different other buildings, how do they kind of work together, and synergize. It was a task. Going through and rereading all those things was a pretty big task. So the first thing I did was I built an expansive pipeline network. This was absolutely crucial. This linked together all of my energy generators and storage facilities, but it also created some huge weaknesses where if a pipeline was destroyed, I was dead in the water. I was completely cut off between my thing harvesting my resources, transporting my resources in order to my generator. And I ended up building walls around the pipeline with flame turrets to protect it from attackers. This created a pretty effective deterrent. Then I also created an energy storage as a backup in case anything happened. That way I wouldn't be completely cut off. But this was a big thing that I had to do this time around. Now for me, I enjoyed the different approach. I felt like it sort of reset my brain and had me think differently. But I also got to use some of the buildings that I hadn't really explored before because the environment called for it. As I kind of alluded to earlier, these changes also make defending more difficult because everything is so spread out. You're going to be leaning on your defensive towers much more than in the past because you simply cannot be in multiple places at once to hold back the hordes of creatures. And because your base isn't as dense, you can't get from point A to point B as quickly. Whereas in the past, your base is just, again, a big square, and you can go from corner to corner pretty quickly and, fend off anything that's attacking on the opposite side. You can't do that in this one as much. So because of that, I had to kind of reset, like I mentioned, and build a little bit differently. I had failed multiple times at defending my base until I figured out a system that worked for me. Now, it included lots and lots of flamethrowers, but still, it worked, and it worked well. So let's talk about the enemies really quick because they did mention new enemies, and these new guys are they're tough to deal with. They chewed through my shields very quickly with their poison and their spike attacks. Investing in a good defense was very key early on and making sure that I understood movement abilities as well as being able to kind of just survive attacks. Now, in classic RTS enemy design, Riftbreaker follows the same formula. If they're weak, they show up in massive numbers and overwhelm you using a numbers advantage. If they're tough, there's only a handful, but they deal tons of damage and are hard to bring down. Now, the problem is they combine both of these things together, right? You have weak, massive numbers of enemies, and then sprinkled throughout those massive numbers are the really tough damage-dealing enemies. As I was sitting there fighting these hordes, one of the new enemy types came out, and this one reminded me a lot of the Knight from Remnant, which is this like hulking creature that sort of has a sword-like arm, and it'll dash attack you if you get close enough. And it hurts a lot. It hurts a lot, so make sure to take them down from range, but it just reminded me a lot of that. So there's a lot of varieties sprinkled through, and there's a lot of different ways to deal with them, whether it is a chain gun, whether it is like this like blade tosser, whether it's a flamethrower, a missile launcher, grenade launcher. There's all sorts of different weapons, and each one is going to be a little bit more effective against some than others. But it seems that most enemies on this world have a great attack range, and they can start pinging you off screen very quickly, so you need to be aware of your surroundings. There's also an enemy type that hides in the flowers. So as you walk by these flowers, you'll see them kind of pop up, and they look like the piranha plant from Mario. So that's just, there's a lot of stuff just hidden away in this world. It's incredibly hostile. It was really fun to try to sort of like figure out and like learn and go, okay, this is what I need to look for in terms of this enemy type. These enemies don't do particularly well against this type of weapon. This weapon is basically ineffective against these. So there's just a lot of really cool stuff to kind of re-strategize and learn how to tackle the different challenges that this particular update and DLC gives you. So all in all, the story and the difficulty ramp for Fungal Swamp was a very nice change of pace. The developers did it the right way by creating a unique environment as the difficulty factor instead of simply increasing damage, health, and enemy numbers. As we see in multiple games, it's, hey guys, this is, a more challenging scenario, and all they did was go, hey, we added 100 more enemies, we gave them 100 extra health, and they deal 100 extra damage. And it's like, sure, that makes it more challenging, but it doesn't make it uniquely challenging. So I really applaud them for going this direction instead of taking the easy way and just going, hey, we'll just crank these numbers up. So that's the swamp. Let's talk about the forest. So the Fungal Forest, this biome felt a lot closer to home. It didn't have the large swaths of standing water to work around. Instead, it provides you with a nice, firm ground to build a traditional base on. Now, that didn't make it too much easier to defend against these like overwhelming number of enemies, just because the size of the groups is so massive. But it did allow me to focus my efforts on a single location a bit more, and again, get sort of that movement ability back, where I could travel from corner to corner a little more quickly. And because things weren't so spread out, I was able to defend it a little bit longer, and I was able to survive a little bit longer. So this biome is the one that I tried in survival mode, Fungal Forest, and I had a great time with it. If you're more keen on the sort of like OG Riftbreaker experience, I would tell you to hop into this mode first to reacquaint yourself with everything, and then hop into the new story DLC afterwards. That way you can sort of get your bearings, and then once you sort of get your sea legs back, you can jump into the swamp experience, and you'll have a little bit better handle on stuff. That way you can go and start building, and you're not gonna have that learning curve or relearning curve to try to figure out, okay, how do I need to build this? How do I need to tackle this kind of environment? What do I need to do? So here, on the Fungal Forest, I was able to create a strong base, learn about the new buildings, learn about the new research nodes, and like I said, get a handle on things. That way I was prepared for anything that came my way. So guys, while my adventure back in Riftbreaker was a fun one, it's very enjoyable, there were a few things that I struggled with. So one, if you're someone who hasn't played in a while, like me, be prepared to spend lots of time reading different tooltips and tips overall to just sort of refresh yourself. This is a very dense game that's packed with lots of bits and pieces. So you're going to need to familiarize yourself with everything again if you want to tackle this new DLC without feeling at a disadvantage or feeling frustrated. I'm not saying it's going to be an hour, right? I didn't spend an hour going through and reading, but I did spend 20-25 minutes just reading through everything again, and it really paid off. It kind of put me in a place where I knew once I landed all the different kind of tools I had in my tool belt and what I could do in order to survive. So invest now, prepare yourself, and then jump in after. Number two, the new biomes, they're difficult. They're designed to be. So be prepared to fail and fail again until you find a system that works for you, or even a location that works for you. So be prepared to just fail. Next, invest in defense and efficiency. Firepower is great when you need it, but if you can't protect your base, then you're going to run out of ammo and you're going to run out of health sooner than later. So making sure to pick defensive things and efficiency-based things is going to put you at a better advantage than if you just go pure glass cannon firepower. And I know I'm not telling the RTS or base builder folks anything new there, but for somebody like me that makes the jump from action RPGs, and even zoom action RPGs over into a game like this, it was a little mental swap. So with that, I want to encourage you guys, jump back into the game, check out the free update, and if you enjoy it, then consider checking out the paid story DLC. I had a blast with it, but I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think so far about this game? What do you guys think about the free update? Do you still play Riftbreaker? And if you do, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section below. As always, this has been Vulkan. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.